Chapter 2. How the brothers were persuaded to visit the court of the Great Khan. It happened while these brothers were in Bukhara, that a person of consequence and gifted with great talents made his appearance there. As ambassador from Hulaku, mentioned above, he was on the way to the Great Khan, supreme chief of all the Tartars, who lived at the far edge of the continent in a direction between northeast and east. Never having had an opportunity of seeing any natives of Italy, he was highly gratified at meeting and conversing with these brothers, who had now become proficient in the Tartar language. After associating with them for several days and finding their manners agreeable, he proposed to them that they should accompany him to the Great Khan, who would be pleased by their coming to his court, at Peiping, which had not been visited by any person from their country. He added assurances that they would be honorably received and rewarded with many gifts. Convinced that their attempts to return home would expose them to gravest risks, they agreed to this proposal, and commending themselves to the protection of the Almighty, they set out on their journey in the suite of the ambassador, attended by several Christian servants whom they had brought with them from Venice. The course they took at first was between the northeast and north, and an entire year passed before they reached the imperial residence, in consequence of extraordinary delays resulting from snows and swollen rivers, which obligated them to halt until the snows had melted and the floods had subsided. They observed many noteworthy things on their journey, but these our hero omitted, since they will be described by Marco Polo later in this book. Chapter 3. How the Great Khan sent the two brothers as his envoys to the Pope. Being introduced to the presence of the Great Khan, Kublai, the travelers were received by him with great hospitality and friendliness, and as they were the first Latins to visit that country, they were entertained with feasts and honored with other marks of distinction. Entering gracefully into conversation with them, he made earnest inquiries concerning the western parts of the world, and the Emperor of the Romans, and other Christian kings and princes. He wished to be informed of their relative importance, their possessions, the manner in which justice was administered in their kingdoms, and how they conducted themselves in warfare. Above all, he questioned them about the Pope, the affairs of the Church, and the religious worship and doctrine of the Christians. Being well-instructed and discreet men, they gave appropriate answers on all these points in the Tartar language, with which they were perfectly acquainted. The result was that the Great Khan, holding them in high esteem, frequently summoned them to talk with him. When he had obtained all the information that the two brothers could give him, he was well satisfied. Having decided to use them as ambassadors to the Pope, he proposed to them, with many kind entreaties, that they should accompany one of his barons, named Kogatal, on a mission to the See of Rome. His object, he told them, was to request His Holiness to send him 100 men of learning, thoroughly acquainted with the principles of the Christian religion, as well as with the 7 arts. They were to be qualified to prove to the learned of his dominions, by just and fair argument, that the faith professed by Christians is superior to, and founded upon more evident truth than, any other. That the gods of the Tartars, and the idols worshipped in their houses, are only evil spirits, and that they, and the people of the East in general, were under an error in revering them as divinities. He said, moreover, that he would be pleased if upon their return they should bring with him from Jerusalem some of the holy oil from the lamp which is kept burning over the sepulchre of our Lord Jesus Christ, whom he professed to hold in veneration, and to consider the true God. Having heard these commands by the Great Khan, they humbly prostrated themselves before him, declaring their willingness and insistent readiness to perform to the utmost of their ability whatever might be the royal will. Upon which he caused letters to be written in the Tartar language in his name to the Pope of Rome, and these he turned over to them. He likewise gave orders that they should be furnished with a golden tablet displaying the imperial cipher, according to the custom established by His Majesty. By virtue of this, the bearer, together with his whole suite, are safely conveyed and escorted from station to station by the governors of all places within the imperial dominions, and are entitled, during the time of their stay in any city, castle, town, or village, to a supply of provisions and everything necessary for their accommodation. Thus honorably commissioned, they took leave of the Great Khan and set out on their journey, but had not proceeded more than 20 days when the officer named Kogatal, their companion, fell dangerously ill and unable to proceed further, halted at a certain city. In this dilemma, it was determined, upon consulting all who were present, and with the approval of the man himself, that they should leave him behind. In their journey, they were greatly assisted by the royal tablet, which secured them attention in every place through which they passed. Their expenses were taken care of, and escorts were furnished. But notwithstanding these advantages, so great were the natural difficulties they had to encounter, from extreme cold, snow, ice, and the flooding of rivers, that their progress was unavoidably tedious, and 3 years passed before they reached a seaport town named Laias in Lesser Armenia. Departing from there by sea, they arrived at Acre, an important seaport in northern Palestine, in the month of April 1269, and there learned with dismay that Pope Clement IV had recently died. A legate, whom he had appointed, named Tadalo of Piacenza, was at this time resident in Acre, and to him they gave an account of the mission they had been given by the Great Khan of Tartary. He advised them by all means to await the election of another pope, and when that had taken place, to carry out their embassy. Approving of this, they determined to use the interval for a visit to their families in Venice. They accordingly embarked and anchored in a ship bound for Negropont, an island in the eastern Aegean Sea, and from there went on to Venice. There, Nicola Polo found that his wife, whom he had left with child at his departure, had died after having been delivered of a son. The boy had been named Marco, and was now 15 years of age. This is the Marco by whom the present work is composed, and who will give therein an account of all those matters of which he has been an eyewitness.